Who am I? Yeah, that's a great question. And I've been wondering about that for a long time. Really long time. Mostly all my life. Life has been this kind of mystery, you know, what is going on here? And particularly, who am I is the kind of the most central question in relation to that. One thing is to understand the world, but also my relationship to the world. So without knowing who I am, you know, how can I understand the world? How can I understand anything? And so I've been roaming around in the spiritual world for a long time and studied philosophy and psychology and reading all the kinds of books and to grapple more and more with that question, who am I? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? And so on. And I'm absolutely sure that I'm not alone in this, and I think maybe some people probably think about it a little bit more than others. And I'm among those who kind of really contemplate that every day almost, and at least the magic and the mystery of life, you know, how amazing it is to be here, how amazing it is to be alive, you know. But thanks to getting in touch with particularly Indian philosophy, or what is called Advaita Vedanta, for a couple of years ago, this has really changed a lot, because finally I kind of get presented with the knowledge where these answers is being actually clarified to a great extent, and gives a very clear understanding of who I am. So thanks to this knowledge in particular, this has become pretty clear for me in many ways, and so the intention now is to explain a little bit about who I am from the perspective of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is, it can be called a philosophy, but it's more a method of self-inquiry, and it's more actually a kind of a science of consciousness. It's about investigating your own experience of life. And we're going to do a little bit of inquiry right now just to find out who you are, and apply a kind of a logical method. So there is nothing to believe in here. There is nothing. It's not a religion. It's not a faith, but it's more a kind of a systematic knowledge of investigating who I am, and investigating your own, the logic of your own experience. In many ways, you know, who am I is actually the most stupid question you can ask, because it is completely obvious. Everybody knows who they are. In the sense that everybody knows that I exist. I mean, I cannot deny the fact that I exist. And so I really know who I am. I have this knowledge, this knowing that I exist. And so I can say, well, how do I know that? Well, I just know it, right? I mean, there's nothing you can do to be awake and to be aware. I'm just aware. That's my nature. My nature is to exist. My nature is to be conscious. So that's what I am. I am consciousness and I'm existence. The only two things that I cannot deny about myself. It's impossible to deny it. I can't say I don't exist. That would be meaningless. And otherwise also say I'm not conscious. That's also pretty absurd to say. So, but knowing this, knowing that I'm consciousness, knowing that I am existence, so the thing is that the implications of that is not really quite clear. And so to elaborate on my nature as consciousness and existence, then we have to dig a little bit deeper into the logic and a little deeper into the method of self-inquiry. So what I like to present people with is what I call the bread test, in the sense is that you should test whether you're a bread or not. Some say, are you stupid as a bread, you know, and I'll get a chance to check that. And so what you need to know is to know the difference between the subject and the object. And that was something that we already learned in school. You say, John goes to school, and so John being the subject, and the school being the object. And so there is a fundamental difference between the subject and the object. So to describe an object first, and then in case we take a loaf of bread, it has location, it exists in space and time. It has a certain weight, it has a form, and you can cut it into pieces, you can cut it into two, and you have two half breads. And you can buy the bread, and once you bought it, you can do with the bread what you want. You can throw it in the wall, you can eat it, and do with it absolutely what that you want. It's an object, and you cannot hold it responsible in case it doesn't taste good. You cannot blame the bread, right? You will have to go to the baker and blame him holding it responsible because he made the bread, right? So that's pretty simple, straightforward to understand an object. It's a dead thing in the sense that it doesn't have a will on its own, it doesn't have consciousness, you cannot hold it responsible for its actions and how it behaves or how it tastes, and so on. But the subject, on the other hand, is different. I am a subject, and every human being is a subject. Also an animal is a subject. So, but the thing is that the subject, like a human being, you cannot do as we did with the bread. You cannot cut a human being in two and then have two half humans, or cut it in slices and then you have different pieces of humans. So you can remove arms and legs and many vital parts in the body, and you still have a whole human being. You still have a whole human. And so this is the subjective quality that every living conscious being possess. And so then the next question becomes, where is it? Where is the subject? And where does it begin and where does it end? So the subject does not have any locality. It doesn't exist in time and space. And it doesn't have any it's not an object. It's not a physical place in the brain where you can say, there is the human, there is the subject. So the subject is consciousness in itself. It's existence. And so when you try to say, well, where does the subject begin? It's like asking the question, where does the universe end? And what is outside of that? So existence does not have an end. Existence just is. It's just being. Beingness. That's existence. So that is who I am. And so then that's the bread test, is to make this distinction and see the fundamental difference between an object and a subject, and that as a human being, as a living being, I am a subject, and which holds me responsible for my actions and gives me a possibility to make choices, and with choices also comes the possibility of making mistakes, and that I am not an object, and I feel insulted if anybody treats me as an object, if anybody treats me like a chair or a bread and thinks they can buy me or kill me or whatever. So I have this individuality, which is the subject, and the subject is constituted not by having a physical location in the brain, but is constituted by being conscious and having an existence, or have being existence. It's not like there is several consciousnesses and several existences. There is just one consciousness and one existence, and I am that. So this is the kind of the main human problem called ignorance. It's a kind of very technical terms, and it just means one thing. It means that there is a confusion between the subject and the object. The confusion being that the subject thinks that it is the object. And this basic confusion takes place when I think that I am this body, that I am my thoughts, that I am my feelings, that I am this person which there is a picture of in my passport, which has a place to live, and so on. This personality, my sun sign, my horoscope, my my history, my work, and so on. All these things that we identify with, I think, is me. But that's all objects. It's all objects. Except for me. I am the subject. So, and this is called dualism in the sense that it's instantaneous. It's built in. Everybody are born ignorant. You're born ignorant because the way it's set up, you will immediately identify with your body. It's instantaneous. Like you get immediately drawn into the dualistic world because it seems like I am the body. It seems like I'm the feelings. So this is the basic lesson of breaking down this ignorance and understanding that the subject is the knower of the experiences. It's the knower of the body. It's the knower of the feelings. And this is also what often comes through meditation. When you meditate, it becomes kind of intuitively clear that I'm just this knower. I'm the witness of what is happening in my life, in my mind, of thoughts, feelings, emotions, and the sensations of the body, etc. So far we've kind of established that I am consciousness and I am existence. That's my true nature. And added to this is that my nature is actually also joy. Because consciousness is blissful. It consists of these three things. Sat, Chit, Ananda, meaning existence, consciousness, and bliss and satisfaction. That's my true nature. And so there is a certain bliss, a certain satisfaction, a certain love, a certain contentment, the bliss of my own being, of just being alive. That's why we value life so much. Because everything we do because we love ourselves. We love existence. If depression was my nature, I would be happy if I become depressed. So that's why we cling on to life, because life is basically good. It's good to be alive. And we should try to appreciate that. We should just appreciate that life is good without any form of entertainment. Just being present, just being awake is a state of bliss, which you can kind of cultivate in the sense that when you remove more and more ignorance, more of your identifications, more the consciousness can shine forth, or you can get more and more in touch with who you really are by removing layers and layers of ignorance. To become free, which is the ultimate goal of this understanding, it's not a path. There is nothing you can do to become free, because you are already free. That is my nature. I am consciousness. I am free. I am blissful. That is my nature. And so what is standing in the way is my ignorance. Because I am so confused between the subject and the object all the time, because I believe I am this body, because I believe I am this ego, and and then therefore I live in a state of bondage and confusion due to my own ignorance. So what can remove this is the teachings. It's the clear teaching and the self-inquiry and the logical application of distinguishing what is real and what is apparently real. What is the subject and what is the object. So that is the kind of basic method that one can apply constantly to self-inquire, to always return to the self, always return to the subject. So the essence here is that to know yourself is to understand the difference between the subject and the object. An understanding that I am existence, I am consciousness, and the nature of consciousness is bliss. This is all very good, that okay, now I know that I'm consciousness, I know that I'm existence, and I know that I'm bliss. But my my problem is that I don't feel blissful. So what's going wrong here? Because and what goes wrong is that this is not this simple to understand. It's not enough just to crack the logic. You can understand it intellectually, but it's not enough. This has to go much deeper. It has to be what is called self-realization. Like this knowledge has to turn the dualistic perspective inside out. You have to kind of go inwards and be deeply connected to this truth and realization that I am consciousness, that I am the subject. So for most of us, we are kind of very extroverted in this world, and we get so much entertainment, so much stimulation, that it's very difficult to do this kind of inward process to become self-realized. But at least we can work with it on an intellectual level, because that's a start. It's to understand the method, to understand the logic of it. And so then the final phase is the integration of this knowledge, is to really integrate it deeply into your being and eliminate the ignorance. So what is the big obstacle here is our conditioning, what is called the vasanas, in the sense that we have so many unconscious patterns in our minds, desires, all kinds of things that we want, and all kinds of identifications, which is layers upon layers. You can call it karma, that is a part of your conditioning, and to remove those patterns is really takes some time. So you have to kind of cultivate your mind and your qualifications for adopting, what should I say, self-realization. Although you cannot do anything to become self-realized, because you are already realized, you can still work on your qualifications. That means you can work on your ethical values and purify your mind. And when the mind becomes still, introverted, and pure, these realizations, these truths will kind of dawn on you and become integrated. So for those who have that ambition to really become self-realized, it's, of course, I mean, it is the purpose of life, but in the meantime, we live in a kind of very kind of dramatic times, with a lot of information and a lot of excitement going on, a lot of restlessness going on. So this process is not so easy to do unless one is very, very qualified and can just grasp these things and just become self-realized like this. This being said, it's self-inquiry, Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, the method of self-inquiry is a well worth study, if you really want to understand who you are and the implications of who you are. So there is lots of good teachers out there and there is lots of good videos, lots of people who's teaching Advaita Vedanta. But there is also a lot of confused teachers, and I would say most of them are. That very few people do really have the understanding of the relationship between the subject and the object, and because it's not enough to just say everything is non-dual, because we still have to live in this world. And so that's the kind of the good part of Advaita Vedanta, that it actually addresses the human condition. It addresses that we got to live in this world, and we're not realized yet. We don't have that knowledge yet. So how do we live our lives? How do we go about our lives? So in that sense, this teaching is a very practical teaching. It's not a kind of a just abstract intellectual teaching, but it really is a very concrete guidance of how to live your life, etc., with this knowledge as a base. This is it for now, and Advaita Vedanta is a great teaching, and in further videos we will expand it some more and take various aspects of self-inquiry. Thanks for now.